Hello, this is Victor. I'm here with a Q&A. So this is going to be my first Q&A. I did a video in the past explaining that I want to start with the Q&A, and today I will do the first one. Most likely I will do it every 3 weeks, 1 month, when I see I have enough questions. Or yeah, I will leave here, and then if you want to keep going with the Q&A, I suggest you to put more questions in the comments below. I'm very happy to answer the questions that I receive. And of course, checking the comments, I look at the people. There are some great channels, so I will also mention them as well as they are answering the questions. So from the starter, I have four Q&As, but I think there are four questions, I will say. But I think some of them are quite can take some time, so I decided to go for them. And as well as you can see, I'm not at home. I'm in a hotel. I'm traveling for work, and said, what the best way to spend a little bit of time that doing this Q&A and answer these questions. So let's go to that. And the first question I have is from Heresy Productions. It's a fun channel doing historicals and also Warhammer 40k. And the question is, great video. Question: you paint both fantasy and sci-fi Games Workshop products. Have you ever attempted to play and paint a non-Games Workshop game? And if so, which one tempted you the most? Okay, let's start. In the past, I played BattleTech, and I also played or I started playing Warzone, Mutant Chronicles Warzone, that now have been relaunched. I will say in the last 2 years, something like that, have been relaunched. But to be fair, I keep not playing these games because I did not find people to play that games. I played a lot in the past BattleTech, especially before even they launched the plastic miniatures. But to be fair, the plastic miniatures were terrible, very bad. I have some of them painted. The paint job is also very bad. So, but this is the games I played in the past. But today, the one that for me is the most appealing and the one that is tempting more and more. But I don't decide to do the last change because the last step because I think I have too many armies to be fair in Warhammer 40k and Age of Sigmar. The one that is really tempting me is Melfo. Melifo. It's really and the main driver is I love the miniatures from Melfo. I would love to paint some of them, and I think they are quite challenging and interesting miniatures. So only for the miniatures is the game that for me at this moment is tempting the most. And to be fair, I like to look on alternative sculpts. The point is today Games Workshop is launching so many miniatures and so many news that yeah, it's difficult for me to keep track of what Games Workshop is doing. That adding a new game is a challenge. But if I have to choose one game that for me is tempting the most today is Melfo. And in the past I played BattleTech. Let's go to the next question. This is from Vince Venturella. Uh, so here is the question from Mr. Vince Venturella. Also a great channel, and I really recommend to be subscribed to Vince Venturella if you are not there. He's covering a lot of Warhammer fantasy and some also painting tips. So I liked also to look his painting tips because we learn from each other, I think. And here the question: how do you choose the next army you want to collect? And what pushes you over at the edge buying something? Okay, and yeah, this is I had this is a long question for me because I start armies for very different reasons. Let's start. I started that hobby to painting miniatures with the Chaos Army, and during the second edition there was a moment that Chaos was not supported anymore, and I wanted to jump into another army, and I did for very little time Orcs. But then the Chaos was relaunched, and I keep track on Chaos. When it comes to third edition, I bought the starter box and I decided to start doing the Dark Elder. The reason is it's a completely different way to play Dark Elder than Chaos Space Marines. And for me it was a challenge to change the game style, to look for different miniatures and also to look for a different completed lineup of miniatures. in 40k, keeping talking about 40k, and then I will go to fantasy. Uh, I also started Renegade Guard as a expansion of my Chaos. So I wanted to make a huge Chaos collection. And I was thinking that if you do Chaos, you want to have Renegade Guard. And I also had a lot of appealing for the miniatures from Forge World and from the tanks. So I wanted to do an armored company of Renegades. And this is how I started collecting Imperial Guard, that at the end was Renegade Guards, doing some conversions, and then Forge World launched Renegade Guard, so was completely something that I was very interested on. Uh, and later on, for different reasons, I normally when I start an army is because first I have some appealing for the miniatures. So the main reason to start an army is because I like miniatures. The second reason is because I have an history in the background, or I have read some history, I have read some books that are inspiring me. And this is what happened a little bit with the Space Marines. So I wanted to do again a different army, and I wanted to do something different. I didn't want to do the same type of style that I had for Chaos Space Marines. So this way I went to Space Marines, and I decided to go for Dark Angels to do a lot of bikes and light vehicles to do more infantry armory. And then from there, I started expanding my Imperium army by adding other armies as allies. So this is what I really love when allies were officialized in Warhammer 40k, because in my way to go into new armies was by using allies, by trying to do expand the army and go to in a new setups or a new collection just by using the allies. The last army I started in Warhammer 40k was the Harlequins, and this is why. This is just merely because I saw the miniatures and say I love these miniatures. I saw that they can be allied with Dark Elder again, so it was for me a win-win. Great miniatures. I really wanted the challenge to paint the Harlequin pattern, and this is a thing that completely drives me into uh, the Harlequins. Then if we talk about fantasy slash Age of Sigmar armies. My first army was Skaven, and I always have Skaven. I really love the Redmen. I also like these crazy weapons. And I started this army because I wanted to start playing fantasy, and I chose Skaven because I thought that was the one that was. For a while, I was hesitating if I was doing Chaos, but then I said, okay, Chaos in Fantasy, Chaos in 40k, it's too much Chaos. So let's go for something different, but also one of the bad guys, and I decided to go for Skaven. At the end, they are on the Skaven on the Chaos side, but they are more. Uh, yeah, they are different than standard Chaos. They are on their own. Uh, then when was launched the starter kit of Bretonia, and I don't remember which edition was. It was 4th or 5th edition on Warhammer Fantasy. The one that was Bretonia against Lizardmen. Uh, I really love knights. It's a theme army that I really love. And when I started, Bretonia was not existing. I know that they were in the fluff, but the army of Bretonia was not existing as it is today. So, and I would say that today is not existing anymore, but you understand what I mean. So they were not miniatures; they were nothing for Bretonia. And when I saw the first knights, and this I'm talking about the really the first launch of knights, I fall in love with them and say I want to paint knights, and I want the challenge to the freehand. So again, I was driven by the miniatures. I really love the miniatures. And then at the end, there were the mercenaries, and yeah, I bought a couple of boxes to use the mercenaries. I started loving them. I saw some crazy units like the lizard, the Birdman of Katvaza, and I decided, okay, it's a time to do mercenaries. And Stormcast Eternal, why? Because I bought the box of Age of Sigmar, and at the end I wanted to do something like I really wanted to expand the Stormcast Eternals. The next step will be to expand the Bloodborne. But the last one, I really so the first driver for me to start collecting an army is the miniatures have to appeal to me, and I have to be fair. I like the look of the Stormcast Eternals. I like the heavy armored guys. I know that there was a lot of controversy around that, and then when I have that, I want to do my own color. So Main driver, I like the miniatures. Second driver, I can find a way to play different than the armies that I have. And the third driver is I want to do a theme around the army. And this was at the beginning I was not very focused on the theme, on the latest armies I'm trying to collect. I always think on these three pillars. The miniatures have to appeal to me. The game style have to be something different that I cannot do with the current army, and I want to create a fluff or background around that. So I hope this is answering your question. It's not an easy one, and there are different drivers depending on the army, but I have to say these are the main three drivers that make me to buy. Um, Normally I need a yeah, Harlequins I was really not expecting to start, but I say, okay, I had some Harlequins from all times and say, let's expand this. I saw that was a low miniature count, but most of the times is because I also have a starter set and I buy half of the starter set and that it's a good core to make the army. Um, from and he have here have a question from Edic Beer, another great channel and a very a good supporter of the YouTube community. And here we have the question: Star Wars or Star Trek? Edic Beer, I know that you are fan of Star Trek, but I have to choose Star Wars. Star Wars have always been my yeah, it's always the reason why I start loving science fiction. And this was more on the 80s when I still was a kid. So you can imagine when I was 6 or 8 years old, I started watching Star Wars in the TV, and I fall in love with all these blasters shooting in the space. And this is always it will keep biased. And of course, I'm talking about the first trilogy launch that was indeed the episode 4 to 6. The best film from Star Wars, I will say for me, was the Empire Strike Back. I always, yeah, I think it always impressed me the battle on the snow. Uh, but I have to say that Star Trek, it's very close to Star Wars, and especially I really enjoy the Next Generation, and now I'm looking forward to seeing other series. And I have watched all, uh, I think all the films except the last two because I'm living out of Spain, and to be fair, in Belgium I don't go too much to the cinema, and I'm not buying too much films. But is a thing that I have in my mind. I want to watch the last two films. Um, but yeah, Star Trek is also highly recommended for me. But if I have to choose between Star Wars or Star Trek, Eric is Star Wars. Sorry. And the last question I have: What is your favorite part of the hobby, and what is the one that dislikes the most? And here I also have been a big evolution. I will say when I start the hobby, my first driver or my first or the thing that I liked the most was playing. Today, the thing that I like the most is painting. And when I say painting, is painting. Converting is not a thing that I really I enjoy a lot. So for me, it's really painting and try to challenge myself during the paint job. The second part that I like the most is collecting. I love to watch my collection once it's painted. So yeah, something that I like to have. I'm a collector addict. I used to collect books, I used to collect films, and I love to collect miniatures. The part that I dislike the most is the preparation of the miniature. Assembling preparation is the part I know is a thing that you have to do, but it's not a thing that I fancy to do. So I always the motivation for me to assembly and cleaning and do all this is because I will paint the miniature. So this is what I have in mind when I'm assembling. And it's a part that I dislike the most to the point that sometimes I don't even clean well the miniatures. When I'm painting, I'm realizing that I miss flashes, I miss uh, how it's called this mold lines, and I have to really go back with my knife and clean it up a little bit more to avoid that this is visible. And even filling the gaps is a thing that I don't do very well. So, and I don't do very well not because I don't know how to do it, it's because it's a thing that I don't have passion, I don't like it. And this is the reason why conversion is not something that I really fancy. So I understand. I see a lot of great conversions, and from time to time I like to do conversions and I like to change the miniatures. And I take the point. You want to give your own personality to the miniatures, but I'll prefer to give the personality by the painting job and by painting different than the other people. Say that I have an army that is almost fully converted, and I have to do sometimes small, sometimes bigger conversions. That is my renegade guard, because the renegade guard you have to remove all the eagles and all the imperium symbols, and I swap heads to make them look more or less to look them more heterogenic and not homogeneous army, and so on. So yeah, the my favorite part painting, the part that is that part that I dislike the most, um, cleaning the miniature, preparing the miniature before the painting. And that's all for now. So please, thanks first of all, thanks a lot for, and I forgot to mention the last question was from Tattoo for You. So thanks a lot, guy. Thanks a lot, everybody, for these great questions. I will put the link to the previous video where I have the questions, and you can check all these for people have good channels. So I suggest you also, if you are not subscribed to them, to check. There are 4 different styles of on each channel, I will say, but they are all great channels as well. And if you want to leave questions that you want me to answer for the next Q&A, that most likely will be end of July, maybe beginning of August, leave the questions below. I will not forget to answer your questions. And if you have any other suggestion, you also can leave it in the comments below. But please, if you want to know more about me, if you want to put more questions, you can leave your questions in the comments below. That's all for now. As usual, thanks a lot for watching. Thanks a lot for your support. You can, if you want, you can support me in Patreon. I have a Patreon account. Uh, and yeah, I hope to see you again in this channel. Thanks a lot for watching and see you again later. Bye.